It's that time of year, everybody. Elimination time. It's when dreams come crashing to the ground. Championship aspirations are doused with cold water. And today, this week actually, we have a big one. Ohio State and Texas squaring off, and the loser of this game will be eliminated from the championship bracket. Hey everybody, we got a good one for you. Going to go over the Ohio State-Texas game. I've made some notes, kind of looked things over. We'll go over the buys, we'll go over the injuries, and all that other good stuff. Welcome from a cloudy day in San Diego. We got some rain yesterday. I think I talked about it on the last video. And it's a welcome change. And it's actually not going to stay this way. It's going to warm up yet again. So we're not too worried about it here. I think everybody loves the rain. I just don't like it when it sticks around too long. That's why I live in Southern California. The only drawback is people are figuring it out, and they're coming from everywhere to live in San Diego. And my brother keeps telling me that, according to some source he's heard, San Diego is now the most expensive city in the United States. And I kind of don't doubt it. It's a beautiful weather. We have beaches, lots to do down here. I don't know what took everybody so long. I'm probably going to be moving up north eventually. I'm looking at Northern California. I'm getting to that age where I'm just ready to kind of get a decent place to live. You know, I'm tired of living small here in San Diego because the prices are so high, and I want to have money in my pocket. So I sacrifice, a nicer place, a bigger place for living here, because the outdoors is like my home here. Going outside, riding my bike, going to the beach. I leave my windows and doors open most of the time because it's sunny and pleasant outside. So I don't need to have a palace, but I'm getting to that age where it would be nice to kind of kick back with a little more space, maybe a yard for my cat, things like that. But anyways, we're here to talk about football. And I want to say that, even if one of these teams does get eliminated from, even if both, whatever, whoever gets eliminated, let's just speak to that. Whoever gets eliminated from the championship bracket, all isn't lost. And I made some notes here about draft picks from the last, going back to 2020. Last year's draft, a team that picked 7th or lower. By the way, if you go to the non-championship bracket, you still have a chance to play for the 7th overall pick. And I believe this year that's going to be the Holiday Bowl in our league. So you still have a chance to play for that pick. But I'm just going to go over some of the draft picks from the last few years. You've got last year Jordan Addison, 10th overall. In 2022, Chris Olave was the 7th overall pick. Christian Watson, wide receiver, number 8. And Garrett Wilson was number 9 that year. And as it turns out, all these guys I'm going to mention are all wide receivers, because wide receiver has become a very important position in our league in football. 2021, Devontae Smith was the number 9 overall pick. And in 2020, CeeDee Lamb was picked 10th, and Justin Jefferson was picked 13th. What? Are you kidding me? So obviously, it can happen. You can get a great player picking 7th and below. And you got to remember those draft restrictions in this league limits the top teams from hoarding talent. So most teams that are successful and at the top of the standings are already going to have a great running back and a great wide receiver. They're going to have a couple of those guys. So they're going to have restrictions. They're going to have restrictions at quarterback. And that leaves the teams in the middle of the pack to build. It gives them a shot at some of the top wide receivers, and usually not running backs, I noticed, but wide receivers, a position you can target from 7th to the end of the first round, 7th pick to the end of the first round, and get a good player. If you do your research and you know what you're doing, you can get a decent player. San Diego State picked up CeeDee Lamb back in 2020, and you see how that's worked out for them. I mean, that's what you got to do is look for those wide receivers in those middle picks there, the first round. Garrett Wilson was another guy that the Aztecs picked up in 2022, 9th overall. these two guys are a mainstay of their offense. They are helping this team to the number 2 overall ranking right now. So, all is not lost just because you don't make the championship bracket. Things can change quickly for you if you do keep working at it. And also, I wanted to mention that, I was talking about draft restrictions. I also want to mention that teams at the top, let's say they want one of these young rookies coming into the league, they will have to release somebody to the transfer portal if they want to pick up one of these rookies. There you go again. You can pick up those transfers and build your team that way. You can, all it takes a lot of times is one or two really good offensive players to turn the corner, get you into a better bowl, set you up for a higher draft pick. Even if you're picking up a guy who's only got one more year left in the league, you're getting a guy that's going to help you next year to possibly play for a championship. So let's get down to brass tacks here. This Texas versus Ohio State matchup. When I did the categories, there's 7 scoring categories. I had Ohio State down as winning 4 of them. I have Ohio State winning at running back, at wide receiver, at linebacker, and defensive back. I think they're the better team at those positions. They win 4 out of the 7 categories. I think they win this game, perhaps, but there are some issues. We've got injury issue with Jalen Hurts, for example. So it will be an interesting game, and I think it's predicted to be a very close game, and I think it probably will be. But honestly, Ohio State's had the better season. They have been the hard luck team of this league this year. Their point production has been well above the 4 wins that they have. So they've had bad luck, basically. And as I've said before, it's better to be lucky than good, in my opinion, because, the lucky win, obviously. But as you can see here, the Texas Longhorns have 2 quarterbacks. They have Sam Howell and Brock Purdy. But of course, Sam Howell is on redshirt status. They want to save him for the future. Brock Purdy is their guy. And as you can see, he's more than adequate. He's averaging 9 points per game, 9 fantasy points with 12.4 last week. And he's ready to go again this week. So no issues there for the Texas Longhorns. By comparison, Jalen Hurts is looking at a knee injury. Now, this isn't one that's been keeping him out. He's been dealing with this knee injury for the last 5 weeks. So he is questionable for the game, but I seriously don't think he's going to miss this game. The Eagles are in a playoff run. They're trying to do something special this year. I think they want to, finish what they started last year. They came very close to winning the Super Bowl. So I think they're going to be careful with Jalen Hurts. Perhaps he doesn't run the ball as much, but I don't see them putting him on the bench. And if you look at the depth chart here for the Eagles, they do have Marcus Mariota as their backup quarterback, and he is decent enough to play. And he's been sitting around, staying healthy, I would imagine. So that's a good backup. That was a smart move on the part of the Eagles to have him. So perhaps he does enter the game at some point if Hurts is kind of ailing with that knee injury. That could affect this game for Ohio State because they really have to keep up with the pace that's going to be set by Brock Purdy of Texas. That might be. I have Ohio State down as winning the running game. And one of the big reasons is Zach Moss is going to sit out this game. Zach Moss was averaging 4.4 fantasy points. Last week, he had a pretty rough week. But as you can see, he's a big part of their game. They do have Isaiah Pacheco, and he's averaging 3.7. So, decent there. At least they have some semblance of a running game. Does Texas. But again, you look at Ohio State, and they counter with 2 very good backs in Kenneth Walker III and Najee Harris, who are averaging 7.4 between them. This is a team that can run out 2 running backs in their attack. And last week, as you can see, these 2 guys produced 11 points between them. So I think Ohio State has the clear advantage in the running attack. Once again, Ohio State has the advantage at wide receiver, and this is why. Look at the numbers here on these guys. Khalil Shakir had a chance last week to get Texas a big victory, and he just went flat on them. He scored 1.16 points in a very close game. Could have been the difference maker for Texas, and they wouldn't be looking at an elimination game right now. Quentin Johnson, the rookie, he was a first-round pick and he has fallen far short of expectations. Now, of course, last week you can see he had 3 points, so maybe he's turning the corner. Perhaps maybe the Chargers are going to start using him more as NFL teams often do with their young players. Late in the season, these guys that weren't doing much early on, these young players start to get a little bit more targets late in the season because they want to see what they have. They've had enough time to digest the playbook. And so maybe Quentin Johnson's going to become something for them. Maybe Shakir has a big game, a comeback game this week. Maybe Quentin Johnson continues to develop. They give him more targets, perhaps. And maybe Texas can put something up here in this part of the game, the wide receiver game. But when you look over at Ohio, they have more consistency at the position. Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins. Higgins has struggled this year, and of late, T. Higgins hasn't been much of anything. But they do have Jerry Jeudy, and the Broncos coming off of a big win, of course. Maybe they're going to have something more for Jeudy. He had a kind of a mediocre game last week, so that means maybe he's due for a big one. But up and down the list, I mean, I say Ohio State has an advantage at wide receiver, but it's a slight advantage. As you can see, they really don't have anybody that's putting up the big numbers. T. Higgins has been a major disappointment this season, and he is dealing with a hamstring injury. That will do it, and he is going to be out for this game. So maybe, I'm kind of giving Ohio State a little bit too much leniency here at the wide receiver position. I'd almost want to call this a draw, and I think that's why this becomes a very close game. On paper, it looks like Ohio State is the better team at wideout, but when you look deeper, they're going to struggle to dominate at this position. The tight end position clearly goes to Texas. Ohio State is, they are redshirting Michael Mayer, who's their best guy. Colby Parkinson is dealing with some sort of an injury here. It looks like he's questionable, but he didn't practice, so perhaps he doesn't play, and he's only averaging 1 fantasy point a game. Not much there for Ohio State. Texas, on the other hand, they've been dominating at the position with Jake Ferguson with the Cowboys. Ferguson has been a steady contributor over recent time. When you look at his numbers, that low battery thing, if you're picking that up, that's some of the electronics I have over here that's speaking, and I don't even know what it's talking about. It's probably my brother's stuff. But a look at the recent performance of this Ferguson. 3 points in week 10, 6 points in week 9, 4 points in week 8. I mean, this guy's been steady over the last few weeks. He's been getting tons of targets. Obviously, Jake Ferguson gives Texas an advantage at the tight end position. And that brings us to the defensive line. Defensive line, Ohio State is redshirting Will Anderson. He's their best defensive guy up front. That leaves them with Trayvon Walker and Malcolm Roach. Only problem with Roach is he's got a bye this week. They do have some guys that are pretty much all the same. You got Sam Williams. They're all producing about the same amount of points. Julian Okwara. So, it is what it is with them. They've got a good pass rush with Will Anderson in there, even though he's not really putting up the numbers. This is a situation where, in fantasy, it's really hard to get value out of your defensive line because a lot of the things that they do in real life aren't reflected in the fantasy score. And this is something that Gerald Lane has talked about. Gerald runs the Ohio State Buckeyes, of course. Gerald has talked about trying to, add more value to this position, maybe awarding points for pass rushes like quarterback hurries. And I'm all for that. If Fantrax or Fanstar has that statistical category, I'm down with that one. But I didn't see that they do. So hard to say where we're going to go from here with that. But I would like to add some value to defensive line because a guy like Will Anderson is definitely better than 2 fantasy points per game. But defensive line is where Texas really takes advantage in this one. They've got Alex Highsmith averaging 3. They've got Derek Brown averaging 3. Chase Young averaging 2. He's with a new team, the Niners. He was traded from the Washington Commanders, as you might know. He's always got a big game in him, and he's definitely a great talent. And maybe if he's, surrounded by some more talent like he should be in San Francisco, perhaps he gets some one-on-one opportunities and he can really shine like he should. This guy was the number one pick. He was considered a generational talent. And he goes from that to being traded in his fourth season in the NFL. Kind of shocking. Fourth or fifth season. I think Chase Young, let's see here. Yeah, this is his fourth year out of Ohio State. Other than that, they've got, an assortment of guys. Dante Stills, a couple guys here with a buyer, but these guys are the end of the rotation. So Texas definitely has an advantage on the defensive line. Linebacker is a different story for Texas. Tudu Henry is their number one guy, averaging 2.3 points, but he's got a concussion issue. They might go cautious with him this coming week. Ivan Pace, 1.6, that's their number two guy. That's not going to cut it. Ohio State, on the other hand, comes with Jamin Davis averaging 3, Cody Barton averaging 3. I think Cody Barton, he's nursing some sort of an injury. Yeah, he's out. So that's going to hurt Ohio State's chances right there. They lose a really good defensive player in Cody Barton. EJ Speed on a bye. So once again, things are kind of balancing out and working in Texas's favor. On paper, I said early on, it looks like Ohio State's the better team. But the more you look at this game, it kind of leans towards Texas taking it and Ohio State targeting that Holiday Bowl for the number 7 pick if they can excel in the postseason. Now, this hasn't happened yet, so give Ohio State a shot. Let's not bury them before they're dead. But it's kind of looking tough on them, right, at this point, anyways. You look at the rest of Texas or Ohio State's defense. Kyle Duggar's their best defensive back. He's on a bye. That really doesn't help them out. They do have some other guys, though. A lot of teams are very deep at the defensive back position. It just would be nice to have Duggar out there. He's a great tackler, a great safety. But, I think they can fall back on the likes of Daxton Hill, Jordan Fuller, Javon Holland, Amani Hooker. I mean, they're stacked. Look at all these guys averaging 3 points. There's a lot of guys in the secondary, and I think I did give Ohio State the check mark there in the defensive backfield. When you look at Texas, they're without their best guy, Miles Bryant. They've got the supporting cast is good, but they're not as good as Ohio State's supporting cast. So pretty obvious advantage to Ohio State here. And again, this kind of evens this game out. This is going to be a close one, in my opinion. And I think it is predicted to be a close game. As you can see here, Fanstar, Fanstar has Ohio State by 0. So basically a pick'em game. So yes, the analysis supports this being a close game, and so does the line. It's an elimination game. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think a lot depends on how much Jalen Hurts plays and how well he plays, and then what Brock Purdy does. I don't know what else to say other than this is a tight game, and it should be an interesting result. And even though somebody has to lose this game and be eliminated from the championship round, it's not the end of the world. You got a shot at that Holiday Bowl, and you could do something with that. You could get a decent enough pick to find a player to help your program grow in this league.